Um, so because it's always, like audio is a big deal, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And today we're going to talk to Jodi Krangle. I just love her last name. It reminds me of winter and like Santa. I don't know.
It does. It
Doesn't
does. It
it?
does. Yeah.
Okay. And so she's all about audio branding, audio, having good audio, tech behind it.
Wow.
And she's been in the business for a very long time. And I met her at Podfest. She hosted a coffee that I just randomly signed up the last night for the last morning of Podfest and went to it just open-minded. And
Yeah.
turns out that she's in voiceover, she's a podcaster. And I didn't really get a chance to speak to her as much as I wanted to because there's a lot of people around. So I was like, hey, would you come on the podcast? Because I'd like to have a, conversation with you. So that's where we're at today.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So obviously it's great to have you because you're in voiceover and, the whole audio stuff too. We've all
Yeah.
had our issues.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it's difficult for me. Like, I wasn't in radio. I don't have any background in it at all.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it has been a journey.
Yeah, but it's a part of it, I think. I think it's something that people don't put enough thought into it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you really need to have your audio dialed in. And I'm even to a point now where I'm like, I need to be doing more than just normalizing my auditions. I don't
Yeah.
know if I necessarily need filters or what I need to do, but I definitely know that the engineering and the production side of things is not something that is really secondary anymore. I really feel like it's should come up there at the tip top.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't
Yeah.
you
So
think?
your recordings could be top notch and competitive because at the end of the day, what a client is also listening to is your recording space. And do you have the tools? Do you have the knowledge to edit something, or do we have to do it ourselves? Is that going to take time away from us, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And there's even a learning curve for me coming into from radio. I have some
Yeah.
editing stuff, but it was just a different kind of way, a style of editing, I would say, and more like detailed, I guess. And a lot of times, like I didn't even really do the editing. I had production managers that did all the production, in radio. So it was more of just voicing stuff and not really even having
Mm.
to do the nitty-gritty stuff. But with podcasting and editing and producing, and hosting, I kind of had an idea. But so I want to share something before our guest comes on.
Okay.
You kind of know about this, but I want to share it like officially.
Okay.
I got an audition on Bunny
Yee!
and I caught it. It was, a lot of times you have to catch it, these auditions. They pay you to audition and you have to actually audition to be on this direct booking site. I would say it's a direct booking site because you don't pay to be on it. You have to audition to be on it. And once you get
Yeah.
accepted, they have speedies and they have auditions and they pay you a portion. And, if you get accepted, then it's money in your pocket. It's fun, it's a little stressful,
Yeah.
but it's still fun. So they had a child audition. Now my youngest son is up and running on there. So a lot of those I just saved for him, but he wasn't here. And so I skipped it the first time around and then they
Yeah.
sent it again. So I was like, well, it's almost $20. Like I'll give it a try. So I just kind of tapped into I channeled my inner Gabby and I got accepted. They accepted my audition. So I
Congratulations.
was like, hey, dude, hey, I really like my dad and we want to find a camp. We really want to find a camp, but like we can't find a camp to work at together. Like that's what
Oh
I
my
did.
God, that's
Did you
amazing.
like it?
Yes, I
And
loved it.
I just like went into my deep throat, and just sort of did like a little more. It was like kind of Bart Simpson-y, right? I guess. Like, hey,
A
dude.
little. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I
It
don't know.
sounds great though. It sounds
Yeah.
great. I love it.
Thank you.
You
I don't
caught
know.
a bunny. You caught a bunny.
I caught a bunny. That's so funny. Yeah. I was pretty happy. It all adds up when you do the different auditions and the contests and the speedies. And it kind of
That's
like
amazing.
gets your heart pumping too, because you get the email and then you got to run into
Yeah.
your booth and you try to have to catch it because they only send it to a certain number of people. And then once you get it, then you have to be
Congratulations.
thank you. Yeah, I thought that was pretty fun. So
Are they gonna send it to you? Like,
no, I don't think so. I
no.
mean, you get paid for the audition once they like approve it and then they send it to the client and then the client will choose who they want to do who they want to book.
Oh, okay, okay. Okay, I got it.
So I'm still a little under the weather too. So it was easier for me to kind of get into my
Get
throat
into there.
voice. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So do you have any chaos or anything to share? I've got my sticky notes. So
Anything like specifically chaotic? Uh, I sh yeah, I know I do because Artu's, he's on vacation. Oh, not on vacation, but he's off away. I call it
again,
vacation. Yeah.
again.
Yeah, he's really trying to become a professional poker player.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. So what he does is he like goes to a tournament, like a low budget tournament, and he'll try to win it. Last time he came in second place, I believe.
Wow.
And so he'll earn his entry for the next tournament, which could be a little more pricey. So
Hmm.
that's what he did, and right now he's in Panama.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, is this through a mutual friend that we had on the podcast? Is this one of his tournaments, or is this
No.
no?
No, this is like completely like him doing his own thing. So now I'm here at the house and just trying to get the timing right on everything has been chaotic for me because, for example, I usually don't pick up my son from school. My husband does that
Oh,
because I stay
okay.
home and I cook, right? So everything's like I
Scheduled.
had everything scheduled, but now it's like, oh no, I have to do this beforehand or else I don't have time to cook. And then like everybody's like rushing. And yesterday we ended up eating in the car on the way to soccer.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. That you are a true soccer mom. You are officially the stamp of soccer mom. You need a minivan.
Yeah. I need
You
a
do.
minivan.
You do
Got
need a minivan.
Tupperwares, everything
Yeah.
in there. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's hilarious. That is awesome. I mean, that's what you do when you juggle kids, like,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's what you do.
I feel like a little bit of a failure lately. I mean, we've had illness for like the month going through the whole family, but my
Yeah.
youngest is in karate. My other two, I've always put them in anything that they've wanted to be in. We've done tennis and soccer and all kinds of like different YMCA, classes and see what they're interested in. But my older two are just not interested in sports, and I'm not going to push them into. And being in Southern sports is
Good.
a little bit different now too versus the Midwest. So we'd started in baseball, my youngest or my middle when we got down here, and let me get my email off, and then COVID happened, and so
Mm.
just the coaching and the level of playing is just different. I literally always say that people like birth their babies on the football field and then they're like literally playing. So but my youngest is into karate, but we haven't been
Oh,
able to
that's
go to
awesome.
the dojo for a while because we've just been under the weather. So I don't know. It's easy to beat yourself up as a mom because like you're juggling
Oh,
and you're doing
yes.
all these different things and you're trying to make sure everybody's happy and getting everybody where they need to be. And then,
It's also hard to lose yourself in that.
totally. Yeah, it
So,
is. And that's why I feel like I found myself in the last few years, you know,
yeah.
expanding and meeting new friends through our
Mm.
community, our voiceover community, um, and then doing the voiceover stuff and getting into podcasting. Well, I was in podcasting before voiceover, and then doing this acting stuff and actually doing something for me. Um,
Exactly.
but then there's
Yeah.
that guilt too, like that you're
Yeah.
doing more for you, you
Than you are
know.
for your family.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. I'm gonna push pause for just 1 second. I want to double check
Okay.
really quickly because I don't I want to make sure that our guest got
Oh, the Zoom link. Okay.
yep, she did. Okay. I'm coming back to you because she's just a few minutes late, so
Okay, that's fine.
no big deal. So all right, back to it. I don't know if we discussed this the last time. We might have discussed this. The AI generated facial
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
audition.
Yeah.
Okay. And how I decided not to do that. I thought it would be interesting to talk about that with Jodi, how like the whole AI
Mm.
stuff, what is it? Chat GPX. It's the
Yeah, yeah,
open
yeah.
AI that's out there right now.
Right. Yeah.
And how like I'm seeing so much text to speech stuff,
Yes.
that I just sort of skip,
I've been
because
skipping all of that.
have you?
Yeah, all of it.
I mean, yeah, because to me, it makes me really nervous. I get nervous, because you just don't know. And even putting yourself out there, hey Jody,
Hey.
Hi.
welcome to the chaos table.
Thank you.
We were
Glad to be here.
just, yeah, this is Gabby,
Hi,
Hi.
Jody.
Gabby.
Hi,
Thank you
Jody.
for hanging out with us today.
Happy to.
We were just chatting about AI, the open
Mm,
AI stuff, and how when I
Sure.
met you at Podfest, there was a whole panel on Chat GPX, and
Yes.
I came across. We were talking about coming across text to speech auditions on a lot of the pay to play, and
Mhm.
then we were talking about how I'd gotten for acting like an AI generated facial audition.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they
Mhm.
wanted to pay you monthly for a certain period of time to be able to have access to your face. And I'm
Mhm.
like, "Okay, skip, no, not doing that." Right? That's a little scary.
Sure.
And then even my husband was saying like stay away from those anime generated TikTok things,
Oh, yeah,
because
yeah.
that's
mm.
a way for them to get your facial recognition. Anyways,
Sure,
but
yeah.
we're talking audio today.
Mhm.
And we touched on that a little bit earlier about people, I think they underestimate how important audio is. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
it's important, but there's got to be more to it, right?
Yeah, psychologically, there's a lot to it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we are hardwired to pay attention to sound from
Yeah.
birth.
Yeah.
So,
Makes
yeah.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the context that I talk about with this is in regards to advertising and marketing and branding.
Yeah.
And in that case, why wouldn't you use the psychology? It just seems like
Yeah.
a no-brainer.
Well, that's true because, like, you actually hear the baby hears your they always say, like, if you talk to the baby in the womb, they can
Hmm.
hear your
Mhm.
voice, and then, obviously, even when they're little and they can't really speak, but, like, I used to talk to my kids nonstop.
Sure. Yeah.
And, like, reading them books and stuff like that, so audio is super important, and
Yeah.
we were touching a little bit on how, I came from radio, so a lot
Hmm.
of times, like, when I voice something, it just goes off to the production director, and then they do all the, like, the production and audio engineering stuff. But, like, now when you're a voice actor, you're in your own booth, you are your own producer and audio engineer, and,
Yeah.
you have to take into consideration, your mic, and then your DAW, and then also, like, the fully produced well, not fully produced, but, like, when you send out an audition,
Hmm.
it's such a competitive world out there
It
that
better sound like they could just use it. Yeah.
yeah,
Mm.
and so you wanna talk a little bit about that, like, in terms of how can we, I don't know, how can we put our best foot forward, because I just normalize it, and I know that there's so much more I could probably be doing.
Yeah, there are so many schools of thought on how you should process or not process your auditions, and I'm not really going to get into that because really
No.
it's a difference between everyone's different and
Yeah.
everyone prefers
Mm.
something different. I know people who leave their breaths in, people who take them out. Like it's
Really?
yeah, there's all sorts of schools of thought with all of that. But what I will say is that a lot of times the people that are hearing the end result, the client, they don't want to work too hard to understand what you'd sound like on the spot.
Right.
So I would say if you can produce it to an extent, it doesn't have to be perfect for broadcast, or it should be broadcast ready, but broadcast ready is, again, another really relative term these days because
Sure.
there's all sorts of ways to broadcast it, right?
Yeah.
And a lot
Mm.
of times music is behind it, and so they won't even hear in some nuances anyway.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would say just put your best foot forward, have a good environment. That
Yeah.
really is number one.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it really, if you sound good on a mic and that mic is $100, that's fine.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that at all. But you can make $100 mic sound really good in a good environment.
Yeah.
You can't make a really expensive mic sound good in an awful environment.
Right, right.
It
That's yeah.
doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a good point. That's a
Mhm.
really good point. But you didn't just start in voiceover though. So we're kind of like skipping a couple beats because when I spoke to you at Podfest, and it was awesome because I actually signed up for your coffee date the night before and it was the final day of Podfest. And so I kind of went into it open-minded, like I wasn't really sure what I was getting myself into, but it was a busy morning and people were
Mhm.
coming and going and things were wrapping up but it was like probably one of my favorite moments of Podfest, just some of the people
I'm
that I met
glad.
at the coffee, yeah, and that was really
Mhm.
cool that you did that, and then just running into you, and I just happened to come over and say thank you for the coffee. I'm
Mhm.
Midwestern, that's just, manners and that kind of stuff, and
Mhm.
then, you were chatting a little bit about, the fact that you didn't come from voiceover, like you have so much more you were in SEO and marketing and like what I
Yeah.
want to know more about that because we didn't really have a chance to really unpack all of that. I think that's cool.
Oh. Well, I've been an early adopter of the internet, an early adopter of computers. I got my first computer in 86.
Wow.
Yeah, so I have really loved the aspect of that logical thinking, I guess. I
Yeah.
love computers and I love everything to do with them. So I was selling computers when the 386 SX was new. This is like way, 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 way back.
Yeah.
Probably the
Wow.
early 90s.
Yep.
Yeah, probably the
Yeah.
late 80s, early 90s. And a very different atmosphere for women at that time.
Yeah.
I bet. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It didn't last a whole long time. And maybe I could have been braver at the time, but I was very young
Yeah.
and I didn't want to deal with it,
Yeah.
honestly. So I kind of left the sales industry and went into the software industry and did a little sales as far as software was concerned. And then the internet happened
Yeah.
in early 90s
Yeah.
and I was actually, I was going to university at the time, and the big, huge, it was called like a VSAT machine. It was this big computer that took up the whole computer building. Like it was huge.
Wow.
And
Wow.
everyone would send in their essays to be able to be laser printed. But in order to do that, you had to do that through a modem.
Hmm.
And so I had a computer. I figured out a modem. I would forward my English essays to the huge computer room and have them all laser printed because my now husband was a
Oh.
grad student and I could get in on his grad student account to get the laser printing
Oh,
before
cool.
laser printing was a thing. I mean, they had dot matrix printing, like it was really
Yeah.
awful and ugly. So I was
Wow.
one of the only people in my class that would have beautifully laser printed essays, which certainly helps. There
Yeah.
you go. There's the trick,
Wow.
right? Make
Right.
it look and sound really nice, and then
Yes.
people
Yeah.
are predisposed to liking what you're offering, right?
Right. Yeah.
Right.
So
That.
thinking as a voice actor, again, put your best foot forward when you
Right.
even when you're doing auditions,
Right.
because that's going to predispose them to like what you're offering.
Yeah.
At
And that goes.
least in, superficially at least.
Yeah, and that kinda
Yeah.
goes back to the whole psychology side of things,
Mhm.
like you're trying to make sure that you're, like, getting into their ear and that it sounds like what they're looking for and
Yeah.
that, like, yeah, it creates, like, a positive experience for them. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But when I was forwarding those laser printing essays, it was very early HTML markup, really. It
Okay.
was HTML because it was really early word processing.
Okay.
And you would have to
Yeah.
like type out like, dot I, and then whatever you had in between there was in italics, and then slash
Wow.
dot I was the end of the italics, right? So
Wow.
so that was the early process word processing. And if you missed that slash dot I at the end, your entire essay came out in italics and you had to do
Wow.
it all over
No.
again. And we
What?
had to walk over to get our essays. So it
Oh,
wasn't like you could just like reprint it and it would happen in 5 seconds. No,
right.
no, 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 no.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did that
Yeah.
have a cost? Like
It wasn't, no, it
3D
was free. It was free,
wow.
but it was a time cost, let me tell you.
Yeah. I bet.
That's
And
so
you learned pretty quickly to pay very close attention to all of the little bitty pieces of that word processing, because otherwise
Wow.
you'd be walking a lot.
yeah.
Yeah.
I remember being in college in the mid 90s and I had gotten a used desktop, with
Hmm.
the giant screen and the
Yep.
modem and then it had like a printer or two.
Hmm.
And then I remember like we could only message inside the university. We couldn't message outside. So it was like that archaic first beginning
Yeah.
messaging system, but it was
They were
fun
called
cuz
bulletin boards. I remember that.
yes.
BBSs. Yeah.
Yeah, it was so crazy and then to think now, I mean you're all I mean cell phones weren't even a thing. I mean my
Yeah.
aunt had like a box or a bag phone,
Yes.
that she would, walk it was so funny. You had to plug it
They
in
were
your car.
huge.
Yeah, they were giant. We're aging
Big
ourselves here, but
brick. Yeah.
right, right. And now we have these iPhones and iPads and you have all this technology. So how did you go from SEO and marketing and being in, in the whole that whole IT realm into voiceover? How did
Well,
that?
Yeah, the reason that I got into SEO and internet marketing was because in the early days of the internet, 1995,
Yep.
I put together a songwriting resource on the web.
Okay.
And because I was a songwriter and I would, put together little resources and ask people questions and they would write me back. And this is before message boards, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So people would email me their responses to these questions I put up on the internet, and then I would make these songwriting surveys. So that
Huh.
was several pages of these question and answer pages. That was the beginning of my resource. It became huge,
Yeah.
and I ran it until 2016, actually. So
Oh, wow.
it was
Wow.
around for a long, long time. It had a message board, it had a radio show, it had songwriter spotlights, it had like contest listings and all sorts of stuff. It was a happening place. But in 2016, if you didn't have a social media outlet,
Yeah.
your website really was kind of dead in the water. There wasn't much you could do with it. So
Right.
unless I wanted to spend a whole huge amount of money to make it a social network of its own, I just kind of had to say, and I was in the midst of really working on voiceover at the time. So
Right.
I didn't want to devote all my time to songwriting that I wasn't doing anymore.
Right.
So for me, that was time. I had a newsletter too that went out nonstop for 18 years every month.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
long, long time. And I had about 8,000 subscribers at the time.
Wow.
So yeah,
That's
so
really
it
cool.
lasted a long time, but I promoted it on a dime. I had no money. So
Yeah.
I learned how to promote that website without having any money to back me up.
Yeah.
And that skill, learning the internet, learning SEO, learning internet marketing was something that I carried through and started working on for clients. So
Wow.
that was my first foray into self-employment, really.
Yeah. To become
And
like
I
an
did that.
entrepreneur. Yeah. That's
Yeah, so I
awesome.
did that for a long time. And in 1995, 96, I volunteered my time at the CNIB, which is the Canadian National Institute for the Blind.
Okay.
And I read magazines onto reel to reel tape.
Oh, I remember
And
reel to reel.
yeah, reel to
Yeah.
reel tape. Yeah,
Yeah.
those days. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did that for around a year and I loved it. It was a lot of fun and I enjoyed the tech as much as I enjoyed actually voicing. So I that kind of percolated in the back of my head for many, many years because I had not known what voiceover was before that. I didn't even know
Yeah.
it existed, really. I wasn't paying attention.
Yeah.
But I've always liked using my voice. So when 2007 rolled around and Google became it, there wasn't anything else.
Yeah.
All the search engines had disappeared. It was pretty much Google or nothing. I
Mm-hmm.
got really bored because SEO was no longer an art and a science. It was only a science, right?
Okay.
There wasn't
Um,
multiple things to worry about. It just became here's the algorithm. It changes every month. Do the best you can. Like it just,
Right.
you know what I
yeah.
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
The whole content is king thing has been around for I don't know how long. Like it's just,
Yeah.
and it never goes away. So what are you really doing?
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah.
Keywords. Okay. I just got bored and
Yeah.
I was already self-employed. So I thought, well, switch focus. I'm already here. I'm already out. Let's just figure out how this works and do it. And I did. And one day I was doing SEO, and the next day I was doing voiceover. That was really pretty much it. I knew websites. I could
Yeah.
build myself a website in no second flat.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's like a
So,
big part of your budget too, with your website. So that was pretty awesome. I had to farm
yeah.
that out. I had to farm that out for sure.
Oh,
'Cause
I do now.
do you? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's so funny that you said reels because when I went from like a 4-year, I got my BA eventually, but I went from a
Hmm.
4-year college to a radio TV broadcasting school to be certified. I remember that's how we learned was, using reels. It was hilarious. And
Yeah.
yeah, and oh my gosh. And then
That's
even
tough too.
yeah, it's really tough actually. It's so much easier now.
Hmm.
Oh wow. So like, okay, so how did you end up doing um it had to be so different too back in 2007 in voiceover because right now it's so
Oh, it was.
accessible.
Yeah.
And I feel
Yeah.
like that was also back in the day with the whole like smooth talking, male voice, radio
Yeah. As a woman,
DJ.
that must have been also very difficult, like an obstacle trying to get into that world and having all these men being like, oh, I'm going to choose a man instead of a woman.
Yeah, right? I mean, not
I
to
never thought of it that way when I was first getting into it. It was just there were things that I could do, there were things that men could do, and we just did our own thing. I wasn't
right.
really that worried about it.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
I started, the best thing that you could do is go to a message board because that was our social media at the time.
Hmm.
Facebook, I think, started in what, 2011 or 2010, something like that.
Yes.
So
Yeah. Before.
Eight, two thousand
was it?
eight.
Was it
I
before?
had one
Okay.
when I was 16, so 2006 was when I had it.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay. I had not heard of Facebook until probably 2011.
Yeah. Don't
So
feel bad because I
took
didn't
me
even
a
know what
little while.
MySpace was. I
Yeah.
wasn't even on MySpace. I didn't get on Facebook till 2008. So we're good.
Yeah.
That's fine.
It took me a little bit of time, but I didn't, those days Facebook groups weren't a thing yet,
Yeah.
really.
Mm-mm.
And
Mm,
so really if you wanted advice, you had to go to the message boards that were touted as the place to be for voice actors. If
Right.
you went searching on the internet, which I did regularly. So
Hmm.
so Julie Williams message board. Julie Williams is a coach from way back and she's still coaching, and she had a message board. I think her tagline was "Voice over chocolate" at the time,
Oh my God, that's funny.
and yeah, and her message board was really a popular place, and so a lot of people were there. Kind of like VO VO. Uh, was it VOBS or something like that? It was because it's not. I'm not talking about Dan and George's show. I'm talking about there's a message board that's still going actually right now.
Oh, I
Um,
didn't, not
I
and
familiar with
know.
that.
yeah. Um, in any case, there are still message boards around, but you have to search for them. They're like
Yeah.
hidden around. That was at the time really the only place to go. And so I went on that message board. I asked questions. I read posts. I got my first demos done by a demo mill.
Oh, wow.
Oh
Wow.
yeah. Oh yeah. I had no idea. I didn't know anything. I'm a
Yeah.
musician. So I came at it from that point of view and thought, "Oh, I'll just fall right into it. Yeah, no problem."
Mm.
Yeah, I had a lot to learn. I had
Yeah.
a lot to learn.
I,
Definitely being musical has given me a leg up. I will definitely say that. Understanding the beats and the notes of a script is very helpful, but it is acting. And
Mm,
unless you get that training, you don't really have it yet.
yeah.
yeah.
I would totally agree because I come from radio and you think, oh, I'm just going to fall into it. But no, I did a
Mhm.
lot of training, a lot of coaching,
Yep.
and a lot of getting ready and getting the radio out of my voice. I know Gabby is a singer as well,
Mhm.
so she could probably
Yeah,
identify with
it,
that.
true, but also, and the acting kind of also came naturally to me, but the tech part is what gets me.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
tech.
And I
It
find
can
that
be tough. Yeah.
yeah, but I find that with singers, you get the melody, you get the flow. It's just a
Yeah.
natural
Yeah.
rhythm that you just naturally can find within the script. For me, I'm more of like a radio style. So when I'm looking at the script, I'm looking I really have to work at figuring the
Mhm.
melody and the
Mm,
flow of it all and the
Yeah.
words to emphasize, because with radio, a lot of it's just like when you're like a wham bam, thank you, ma'am, rip and read kind of style thing, and you have your certain personality and that's like what you do,
Sure.
So anyways. But
Yeah.
so you were a singer and you created an album. Did you know that,
Oh,
Gabby?
yes. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I've done a couple of, well, let's say 4 albums now, but only one of them is a solo album. And that
Okay.
solo
yeah.
album came out in 2015. I
Oh,
was with a band called Urban
that's
Tapestry
that's
Oh,
for
cool.
many,
yeah.
many years. We started in 94. We haven't really done anything since 2002, so it's been
Yeah,
a while, but we had a tape and 2 CDs
funny.
and
All right.
yeah. But I did an album of my own in 2015 called Time Will Tell, which was a combination of myself and a friend of mine in the UK named Chris Conway.
Okay.
And he is amazingly talented. One of those musicians, Gabby, that like you love to hate because he does everything, like
Wow.
everything, and he does it
Yeah.
well.
Oh man.
So
Okay.
he's a singer, he's a guitar player, he's a piano player. He plays the
Wow.
theremin for God's sake.
Wow.
He's a mixer, a masterer, like he does like
Everything.
yeah, everything. He basically made it possible for me as a lone vocalist to be able to put out an album because he did everything else.
Wow.
It was
That's cool.
amazing. Yeah. So I just had to sing. It was fantastic. I mean, we
That's
interpreted some
amazing.
songs in a different way, and some of them were songs that I'd written, some of them were songs he'd written, some we'd written together, and some were some covers. And we just had a lot of fun with it. But we'd known each other since 1999, and it took us until 2015 to really be able to make that collaboration work long distance.
Yeah, I could see
So
that.
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
so
Technology probably
tech-wise,
helped with that, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, tech-wise, 2015 was really when that became entirely possible. When it was quick enough to send something by the internet for him to get a WAV file or an MP3 and then be able to send me back the same, and then me work on my end in the multi-track of Adobe Audition and send back a track to him, et
Yeah.
cetera, et cetera. Like it just became fairly seamless. It's
Yeah.
way more seamless now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But even then, like that was when that first became possible. And
Mhm.
so that's when we decided to finally do our album together, and it was a lot of fun.
That's so
That's
cool.
Yeah,
amazing.
That's like
I
a
bet you
check off.
learned a lot too from
I
him.
did. Yes.
It's almost,
I
it's
learned a
also
lot.
like a check off your bucket list kind of thing too. Like I have an
Yeah.
album,
Yeah,
it's like that's kind
Yeah.
of a cool thing to say, like
well, it's
I think
kind of
that's
like people writing books, right? Like I don't want to
yes.
write a book.
Yeah.
I don't have a book in me. I know people say everyone has a book. I'm not, that's not my thing. I'm
Yeah.
doing the podcast. I've done the album. The album is what I had in me.
Yeah. Right.
Yes.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Gabby's so funny. I didn't even know that she was a singer when I went out to Vegas to go visit where we trained in person. She took me to a karaoke bar for the very first time. Now, I just have to
Nice.
tell you, I do not have singing inside me. There's no albums inside
She
me
did
at
great though. She did
all.
great.
Yeah, I had to do a Red Hot Chili
Red
Peppers.
Hot Chip.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had it.
Hmm.
Yeah. And even then, like, I mean, there is an art behind. I mean, even like, because Red Hot Chili Peppers, he's almost like rap singing, and it's
Mhm.
really
Yeah.
poetry, So, anyways, I had a hard time with that, but I think you got it on video. You should probably destroy that. So,
I
but
will say that, and Gabby probably, this is why you said that it was a little easier for you to get the acting. And I get that because as a performer in general,
yeah,
when you're
Mm.
on stage, you are really projecting a persona
yeah,
because you're getting
Yeah.
into the song, you are emoting, you're bringing out what that song says to you, to the audience.
mm-hmm,
And so, in a way, that is letting you, that's kind of where the connect to the copy thing comes into play for me
yeah,
with voiceover. And I don't know if that's,
Yeah.
but
Same thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's kind of where we get it.
yeah. I could see that. I could definitely see that because with radio, it's like it's not like that. It's really
Mhm.
just a
Rip and
flat.
read.
Yeah, it is just a rip and read. And even when you're connecting with your audience, you try to speak
Mhm.
to one person. But again, it's more just it's conversational, but at the same time, it's just you have it's just a different way of doing things.
Yeah. Where I've seen people in radio really shine is the improv. Because I
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
don't really have much of an improv background at all. So
Yeah.
if you ask me to do something on the fly, I mean, this is the best it gets, right?
Yeah.
Like what we're doing right now is about as good. Like
Yeah.
that's it for me.
Well, and
But
also
this must
Same.
be easy for you.
Same. Joss is amazing at improv.
Yeah.
I try, but also two explainers is really good for radio people because it's 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
It's
Absolutely.
and but when it comes to narration and it comes to audiobooks and character work and anime
Mhm.
and that kind of stuff, I am taking online acting classes right now that I fell into because of another friend of ours for our accountability group was in voice acting and then ended up going into acting. So I am taking some acting classes and it really has benefited me in learning how to emote emotion and
Sure.
there's a difference, it's for me being on radio, and this is just a video version of being on radio. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Yeah.
it's audio and video.
Sure.
But like when you're really looking at the copy and really dissecting it and trying to figure out the flow and the melody and which words to emphasize and where to emote the emotion, it's a lot all wrapped up into one. And
Oh
I
yeah.
don't think and then you're adding in the audio and your mic technique and your mic and your DAW and your editing and your production and then you're self-directing yourself. So there's a lot
Mhm.
that goes into it. And so and then tying back in all of the audio stuff. Like I want to ask you if somebody said to you, because I know you have a lot of different guests that come on your podcast. Your podcast is Audio Branding, the hidden gem of marketing, right? And I was listening to some of your episodes, and you bring on all different types of people to speak about how audio and audio branding is so important.
Mhm.
So, like, what would you say as like a new voice actor or a voice actor that's in the industry, from your perspective, being a voice actor yourself, and then also from pulling from your experience from your podcast, like what would be something that we could do, to level up, like whether it's tech or, equipment or just anything that we could do that you found interesting, or tips or tricks that you've come across from just speaking to different people on your podcast, or things that you've
Mm.
figured out, that would work to
Um,
help with the audio and the branding.
well, I don't, I'm not sure that there's anything probably that you haven't already covered here many, many times, I'm sure. The whole environment is
Yeah.
really important. So where you're actually doing your recording is an important part of what you're offering to clients.
Yeah.
And I would say one of the things that I learned when I was going through my own branding journey was to keep it simple,
Yeah.
because people will glom onto one concept. One.
Yeah.
Don't give them five.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So, I'm not, I don't know if I really understand the whole branding of voice people, in the sense that, like, I get how you would do that.
Mhm.
But I think that the market is going to tell you. I don't think you get to tell the market.
Yeah.
So,
That's a good point.
in a way, yeah, that's audio branding. You have an audio brand,
Yeah.
but the market is going to tell you where that is. And
That's
if you want to change it, then get coaching to change it.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
interesting that you said that, because I was going to say, when you went into voiceover, you probably had an idea of a genre that you wanted to get into.
Mhm.
And then through our training, we figured out that, of course you can train for that specific genre, like you just said, but at the same time, there are genres that just come at you
Mhm.
that like you, but the genre just is like, oh, I like you a lot, and you just end up getting this one. Is there anything in particular that you start off at, like, where you're like, I really want to do audiobooks, but then you ended up in something else, entirely different? You're like, I'm an anime.
When I started, I was kind of thinking that I would do some animation, but it never really materialized. And then I wasn't kind of heartbroken about that. So,
Yeah.
and that's fine, because I think when you first start in voice acting, you think that there are particular genres that are like out there in the public eye.
Yeah.
And so that's your first experience with what voice acting is. And then when you get a little deeper into the industry, you understand, well, it's a whole bunch of different things.
Mhm.
So, like, I've done TV in show narration. I love that kind of stuff.
Oh,
Documentary
really?
work, that is a lot of fun. And that's the only exception to my rule, because right now I do 5 minutes of finished audio or less. That is my sweet spot. So
Okay.
I'll do corporate narration, commercial, I do some on hold, and that's pretty much where I stick in my corner of the voiceover
Yeah.
world. And I'm fine with that. And I kind of embraced it when I decided to have the podcast, because the podcast deals with a whole bunch of different sound related things, but
Yes.
also mostly in the advertising, branding, marketing type of place, where I wasn't finding a lot of people really wanted to explore. I mean, they were doing it,
Mhm.
but podcast wise, I wasn't seeing things that were focusing on that.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
you kind of fall into where
You're meant
where
to
the
be.
market, yeah,
Yeah.
the market tells you where you're meant to be. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it just kind of happened. And I'm okay with that.
And I'm okay with your voice, your vocal tone when it comes to
Oh
like
my God, it's so
telephony. I
lovely.
would, if
Yeah.
I called angry and I heard your voice, I'd be like, okay, maybe I'll calm down a little bit. Right? Don't you
It's so
agree, Gabby?
smooth and
Yeah.
sweet and rich.
Well,
It's
thank
Yeah.
you.
beautiful.
Yeah, definitely. So you're all over, like I know you're located in Canada, but you
Mhm.
probably voice commercials and corporate all over the world, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
It's not just Canadian. And do you find that being Canadian and having like a Canadian accent has been beneficial in some regards, and then probably maybe not, because I'm Midwestern, so it's like
Yeah.
the certain regions and the certain areas that you come from, I mean, and it's very specific now.
Mhm.
Mm.
If you are going to use an accent or have a tonal quality to your voice, it's very specific these days now, especially in voiceover.
Yeah, I would say probably 95% of my work is in the US.
Oh,
So, if they're using me, I'm assuming that the Canadian accent is either really low or they don't
yeah.
hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, when I just talk to people, I don't worry about it, but
Yeah.
in general, it's usually hard to tell.
Yeah.
And that's happened over time. It took a while for me to get to that place, but
Yeah.
right now, because most of my work is in the US, the people that use me are, they're not hearing the Canadian accent.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't
But
really heard it much either, just, talking to you in a
yeah,
regular
Yeah,
sense,
no, it
but I knew
doesn't.
that yeah, from Canada. But I love
yeah.
Canadian accents. I think that they like the way that they
Yeah.
say certain words. I think it's
Hmm.
like so interesting.
There's a little bit of a, I guess the pronunciation is less loosey goosey, let's say.
Yeah.
So I tend to get work more on the East Coast than the West Coast, mostly
Okay.
because of that. That's
Okay.
kind of
Yeah. That makes
so
Makes
sense.
that
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that kind of is where I would say dialects kind of come in, in a
Yeah.
way,
Mm.
because I was taught to enunciate clearly, and
Yeah.
that's hard. That's something it's really hard to get rid of. So in a way I can train myself through acting to manage to lessen that a little bit, but it's still not maybe on the same par as someone who grew up in California, let's say.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, in a way, there are things that I'm better suited for or not suited for.
It's interesting that you say that too, because I've been told, and I didn't even know about this when I first got started. They said, even though I am Midwestern, so it ends up being a little nasally, and I am
Hmm.
a little nasally anyways because I'm under the weather. But like a lot of times, they would say like you're mushing your words together, or you're just too relaxed, and
Mm.
too laid back. And then I had a little bit of vocal fry. When it comes to
Ah,
audio, I'm like, what is vocal fry? And
yeah.
then there was some references to some very well known actors, and
Hmm.
well, I should say they're reality TV Kardashians.
Of course, yes.
Um, and then of course like an anime Raven, I mean her whole vocal fry, which is like very it's characteristic of her
Hmm.
whole, her whole character. So it's interesting, but I mean you really can lean into, where you are regionally. And it can be very beneficial for you,
Oh yeah.
and even being bilingual with Gabby, she's bilingual, so she can double dip. That's what they used to say, double dip in the English and Spanish, and that's been beneficial for you too, don't you think, Gabby?
Oh yeah, definitely. It has, and I've also noticed that my Spanish, or the way that I pronounce it or manage it, is more like Californian than it would be for Mexico. So I don't get booked a lot for Mexico,
Hmm.
which is weird. But when no, it's not weird. It's just the way I pronounce it. So it's more Americanized.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
I
so
mean, because I've been working in America, in the US for so long, I rarely get hired in Canada.
Oh, really?
Oh, no
Oh,
way.
no.
That's what ends up happening because they're not
Yeah,
recognizing the accent anymore, right?
Right,
yeah,
right. Well, and
exactly.
So,
that's part
yeah.
of it too, is being able to turn it on and off. Like that's another thing that I was trying to, in terms of my audio, being very, very conscious of
Mhm.
what, where I'm at regionally from like Michigan, and now that I'm in the South too. So now I'm noticing little changes in my dialect from being from Michigan and living in Florida. And then also to that whole vocal fry, when to
Mhm.
turn it on and when to turn it off. And so I'm still working on that.
Yeah.
Especially when you're tired. When you're in the booth and you're tired, it's really
Mhm.
easy to sort of fall
Yeah.
in to those. And
Yeah.
Gabby, you even have had funny circumstances where you said words in a certain way that like
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Especially starting out, I would pronounce it in a certain way, and the teacher was like, "No, you pronounce." I'm like, "I'm just getting confused."
Mm.
So
Have you ever had that though? Like there are certain words that I've been saying my whole freaking life that are wrong. Like
yeah.
I booked a commercial for a
Mhm.
realtor, and I have always been saying realtor, right? Like or realtor, and
Mhm.
it's realtor.
Mhm.
Realtor. And so realty, and it's like no, it's realty. So
Mhm.
like I
Mhm.
had to go through and redo, and thank God the production director that I work with, he was very, patient and said this is just one of those things in voiceover. And even too, like when you're looking, your eyes can deceive you
Mm-hmm.
on the page and you see words that are not there, and it's interesting. Do you guys have any words? I have a really hard time saying documentary. I've worked really hard on that. I don't even know if I did it right. Documentary.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Yeah.
Documentary.
That's pretty.
I think in a lot of cases it's regionalisms too. Like I had a school come to me and say that they wanted me to say culinary, not culinary,
Oh,
right?
interesting.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was Baltimore, I think. And it
Okay.
was just they just wanted it that way. And I'm like, okay, it's your dime.
Right.
Yeah.
You're paying me. I'll do it the way you want me to do it.
Did you
So
get
it's
tripped up doing that though? Or
a
like did you have
little
to
bit.
press?
It
Yeah.
just, yeah, it takes a little bit to figure it out. But you know what? We're professionals. We do what the client tells us to do.
Yes.
That's what we do.
Exactly.
But things like family or family or
Yeah.
veterans or veterans, like
Yes.
these kind of things, like, and again, very regional, and they'll
Totally.
tell you how they want it. Just ask.
Yes. Root or route,
Exactly.
Yes,
that kind
that's
of
another
thing.
one.
Data
Yeah.
or data, that
Yep.
kind of stuff, I
Yep.
mean,
Mm-hmm.
I guess you can only ask, if you have the opportunity to be able to ask and be able to get clarification on that.
Sure.
That's interesting.
I have
Mm-hmm.
a question. Sorry.
Yeah, go
Since you
ahead.
were a songwriter, do you also write scripts or have you ever written a script?
No, I prefer
No.
not to at this point. And actually, I'm not much of a songwriter right now either. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Too funny.
It was one of those things where I was doing that when I was like young and angsty.
Nice.
We all had those moments in our day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the young angsty phase. Yes.
Yeah. My young angsty phase, it was in college when I cut all my hair off and had a dorm mate down the hall pierce my nose with a wine cork and a hollow needle. So, while I was listening to Red Hot
Wow.
Chili Peppers, I mean, hey, we all have our
Wow.
moments, right?
Yeah.
I never cut my hair that short ever again. That was not a good look, but
Hmm.
that's too funny. So, okay, so what would be the number one thing? Oh, I already asked you that. Shoot. So when it comes to like audio and audio
Hmm.
branding, like what would you suggest? Because I mean, like there's branding with your website, there's branding with like,
Hmm.
pictures on your website. There's all these different elements to branding. And with audio, how other than just the market finding what is, attracted to your voice,
Hmm.
how do we how do we find it ourselves? You know what I'm saying? Like, how do we find what's best for our voice? I mean, because right now I had this whole conversation with someone on the phone yesterday where it was kind of like, I know my voice has a quality to it in terms of
Hmm.
like the tone and the texture, and even from the regional aspect of it. There's a place for it, right? But it's like getting in front of the right people, and connecting. And it sounds like you've done a really good job at that. You figured out what genres are in your pocket for your voice and you found your client. So how do you get from being here in the booth, knowing your vocal tones and qualities, putting yourself out there, and because it's just a vast landscape of voiceover out there. There's
Yeah.
so many genres and there's so many micro genres and there's so many clients. It's so saturated with like so many people now because it's so accessible. You can build a booth
Sure.
in your home. You can
Yep.
buy $100 microphone or $1,500 microphone.
Hmm.
There's
Hmm.
and you don't have to go in person anymore,
Yeah. Yeah. That's a
to
big one.
audition. So how do you get, over that hump, like how did you get there? Is it timing? Is it luck? Is it perseverance?
Oh, I think it's tenacity,
Mm,
honestly. Just continuing to put one step in front of the other, one
yeah.
foot in front of the other and just keep going because you'll eventually come to a place where you understand your voice in a very intimate way that you may not
Mm,
have understood when you first started.
yeah.
So I think when people first start in voiceover, and you guys are probably way past this, but there are people who start and the very first thing they're doing is emulating someone else because that's what
Yeah.
they have been taught.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is what voiceover sounds like,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So we're in a point right now where people want authenticity beyond everything else. They're
Mhm.
really, really wanting authentic. And that means whatever accent you have, whatever dialect you have, whatever tone you have in your voice,
Mhm.
it doesn't have to be perfect. And, vocal fry, not vocal fry, whatever.
Yeah.
And when you come to a peaceful place about what your voice actually is and what it's capable of doing,
Yeah.
and you understand who you are as a person, you
Mm-hmm.
can just be yourself on the mic,
Mm-hmm.
caring about this thing.
Yeah.
And so it becomes less of a who can I sound like and more of a what aspect of myself should I bring out in this script?
Yeah.
Mm.
I
And
like that.
at that point, then you're figuring out who you actually are as a performer.
Mm-hmm.
And when you know that, it's easier to brand yourself because then you're just being you and people are coming to hire you who understand who you are.
Yeah.
And then that becomes a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
And you find your niche by letting that happen.
Yeah.
So it's a learning process. Really, we just have to learn ourselves and
Yeah.
then other people will figure it out.
And it takes time too. I'm assuming
Mhm.
it took you. How long did it take you? Building your voice. You've been in it since 2007, so it's probably took
Yeah,
you a
it's
while to
been
get
like 15
started.
years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it probably took 2.5 years before I was even making a living. And by
Okay.
that, what I would say is the same amount of money that I was making as an SEO internet marketing person on my own, which wasn't much, to be honest.
Right.
I mean, it
Right.
was okay, but it was not, it was not a hugely fantastic living. But I was young and I didn't have all that much to spend on, so it was fine.
Yeah.
And I just kept going. And, really, the thing that I realized was that the sky's the limit. There really is no limit because we're not selling our hours for dollars.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
We're selling our expertise for payment.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and really the less amount of time I can take to do a voiceover, the better it is for my client.
Yeah.
Because then I know exactly what pocket I need to be in for this client and I get them what they need right the first time,
Yeah.
as opposed
Mm.
to them having to come back to me several times and say, "Well, I don't really like how you did this. Can you do this again?" Or,
Yeah.
I'm not sure I like that tone."
Yeah.
They're hiring me for me, and I know
Mm-hmm.
me so well that if they didn't want me, we wouldn't be having this conversation. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like,
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
know exactly what to give them because that's what they're hiring me for.
Right. I love that. I love that. I love that perspective. Gabby, we're gonna say something.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
have another question. Going back to marketing, did you go to school for marketing?
No, not at all.
No.
No.
So how
Self-taught entirely.
wow. Did you take any classes like in the psychology of marketing or how to access people's brains, basically?
Not really, but I when I was first in university, I was planning on getting a psychology degree. So I did
Okay.
take social
Okay.
psychology and a few psychology courses, which some of it stuck with me, a lot of it didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I unfortunately I walked into a statistics class and had to take that in order to finish my psychology degree, and I know he was speaking English. He was
Yeah.
saying English words. They made no sense to me at all. I have never in my life experienced that moment where I knew he was speaking English, but there was absolutely no comprehension happening
Yeah.
in my brain.
Yeah.
And I was
Yeah.
like, okay, I think I need to drop this course because I am not going to pass this. I
Yeah.
guess
Yeah.
psychology is not in the future for me.
Stats is a tough class. I had to
It
take
is.
stats too, and I went to the community college because I was like, I'm not paying
Mhm.
full ticket price at the 4 year. I'm gonna go to the community
Sure.
college and just do it there because and it
Why
was
not?
easier. It was a little bit
Yeah.
easier too. It was a little bit more like digestible. So that was a tough
Hmm.
class. So do you find that having your podcast is in terms of marketing and branding and also like from the audio side of things, has it been able to enhance your voiceover career? I started my podcast before I got into voiceover, and now I'm sort of niching out in this season 4,
Hmm.
and really highlighting creatives and also other people that have podcasts, and supporting other podcasters. Just because there's so many of us out there, and this is how you organically grow is connecting with
Yeah.
people and not just connecting, but really, well, I would say not just networking, but connecting with people.
Yeah. Hmm.
And because it's so important. Do you find that this is goes hand in hand with your I sound a little Canadian there. I said I had hand in hand. Anyway, so you know, um, but you know what I'm saying? Like, does it help? And with
Yeah.
SEO, this is a
Mhm.
two-part question. SEO,
Okay.
do you utilize like Otter and transcribe your podcast, for the SEO purposes for the marketing and the branding?
Yeah, I haven't used a straight transcription just yet.
Okay.
I do have show notes. I have a blog, and at the top of the blog is the player.
Okay.
So I am directing people to my website all the time. I'm not
Okay.
directing them to Apple Podcast or Spotify or
Oh,
whatever.
okay. Interesting.
Although they can certainly hear it there. And it's on YouTube, and I have video clips and such on YouTube
Yeah,
as well,
us
so they
too.
can certainly find it there. People listen in different ways. And so I want to give them as many different ways for them to listen as they possibly can. But yeah, I want to get more traffic to my website. So that's the reason why I have the blog. And sometimes I have videos that I link to, or pictures, or, like I said, the player is at the top so they can listen to it right while they're reading the show notes.
Oh, interesting.
And the show notes are definitely SEO. There are keywords in there.
Yeah.
It's not overt, but
Yeah.
that it's there. Transcription is a different kind of thing, and I probably will get into it at some point, but it's very time consuming to make sure that it's accurate.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have the time to do that right now.
Mm-mm.
And there are so many other things that I'm paying for when it comes to this podcast that, yeah, it's going to have to wait.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you said that, because I've been dragging my feet on transcribing the podcast. And I know it's
Mhm.
also for low vision, no vision.
Yeah.
It's almost one of those things that like it should be done, and for that aspect, so that you are accessible for all,
Hmm.
all people. But at the
Yeah.
same time, it's just yet another additional monthly payment or yearly subscription that
Yeah.
you have to pay for. And I hear that Otter has gotten a little bit better, and so like you have to worry less about reading all the way through it. But
Yeah.
I'm like, in my head, for me, when it comes to like tech and SEO and like all the stuff that your brain is very good at, I'm kind of like, tick, 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 tick. Is it
Yeah.
working? It looks like it's working. And it's been like a really big learning curve for me
Sure.
personally, even just
Hmm.
figuring out the whole podcasting world. Because a lot of people say like, oh, you just grab a microphone and you start recording yourself. No, there's way more to
Mm.
do.
Yeah.
From artwork to audio to equipment to, internet. And then it also brings me down to, social media. Do you utilize
Mhm.
social media for your voiceover? Because when
Oh,
I went to
yeah.
Podfest, I went to one of the tracks where they talked about, taking, um, even just getting yourself on there on,
Mhm.
Zoom or whatever you're recording on, and record yourself, and then upload it to Descript, and then make these little mini videos and use those as content, to also promote your voiceover
Mhm.
business or your podcast. Or yeah, it's a
Yeah.
lot.
There's only so many hours in the
I
day,
know.
and I have only so many hours to devote. I do the best that I can. I hire out to a lot of people who
Oh,
help me out. I actually do have a social marketing media person who does a
okay.
really, really good job and sounds like me, which is good.
Yeah.
And then, of course, when you do that, even when you utilize someone else's skills to help you do that, you need to be the one responding. So it's
Yeah.
not like I'm just posting and forgetting. If someone says something on the post, I'm the one responding, not her.
Right. Yeah.
So that's how you actually get engagement with your posts, because otherwise you're just posting out into the ether and no one's paying attention. Why
Yeah.
should they? You're not going to say anything.
Yeah.
Mm.
That's
So,
true.
yeah.
I just really want to get to a point with voiceover and with podcasting where I can start, utilizing uploading little mini clips. And I know we're winding down on our time, but like,
Mm,
utilizing little mini clips, or even just getting out there and just sharing my voice on social media, whether it's like
mhm.
just trying to figure out a way to promote. But it's a lot of work. It is a lot of
It
work. And there are
is.
so many days. I mean, I've done voiceover challenges, I've done podcasting
Sure.
challenges, I've done all kinds of social media reel
Mhm.
challenges. And it's not just, it takes an hour, to do one
Yeah.
post. And it sounds like a good idea, but
It's
I
a lot of
find,
work.
oh my God, it's such a lot. It's like so much work.
I will say that part of the thing about podcasting is the relationships that you make by
Yeah.
being on other people's shows or having them on yours. That's really where podcasting shines.
Yeah.
Because
Mm.
if I get jobs,
Yeah.
sorry.
It's like a
It's
real
That's
phone.
okay.
Yeah, it's
Is,
like a
is,
real
is the
phone.
real
Oh my
phone like
goodness.
plugged
It's a
into the
real
wall?
It's not into the wall, no. but but it is oh my goodness. Okay, that's not good.
Oh no,
Yeah,
it's
so
chaos. That's perfect. I love it.
Yeah.
it'll okay. We've had the chaos. There we go. It'll
Yeah,
be
we
off in
have.
just a second here. Okay,
By the way,
that's
we
okay.
actually I had a guest on that had her was the automatic Zumba, or no, not Zumba. What's the automatic
Oh, the
vacuum?
Roomba. The
Oh yeah,
Roomba.
it
Yeah,
went
yeah.
off like twice, and it was hilarious. And she's like, "I'm so sorry." I'm like, "No, this is perfect.
That's
That's
so, yeah, that's funny.
chaos."
Yeah. I do have a work phone number, and that's actually what that
Oh,
was, but they'll leave a message if they need anything.
well,
But
yeah.
yeah, where was I going with that? I will say that, yeah, the relationships are really the important part of
Mm-hmm.
this. And I started the podcast to help people understand why sound was important. So for
Mm-hmm.
all of us who work in sound, and that means that the people I'm having on are basically the people who hire us.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, because those people, pardon me, those people often have to explain to their clients why it's important.
Yeah.
So I want them to have that pulpit to be able to speak to why it is important and
Yeah.
let their clients possibly know why this is something they should be paying attention to.
That's
And so
interesting.
those
Yeah.
relationships build, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you find, is there one particular aha moment in your podcasting journey that you're kind of like, oh my God, I never even thought about that? Or, you're speaking to someone and they're like, la 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 about the audio and da da da.
Mhm.
And you're like, oh my gosh, wow, like mind blown. Did you? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I've had several of those, but
Yeah.
one of the first ones was with Steve Keller, who is the sonic strategy director over at SiriusXM. So he does
Okay.
SiriusXM, Pandora, Stitcher. I think they have SoundCloud now.
Yeah.
And his studio, his advertising studio, is called Studio Resonate. So
Okay.
Studio Resonate is sort of like an arm of Pandora, SiriusXM, and their advertising. And he was talking a lot about the work that they've done for clients in the past, and this was before COVID and all of that. But he actually had a Gatorade-like drink where they did a DJ station, and they had people listen to sounds and music, and then dial in whether they wanted more salty or sweet in this Gatorade drink called Propel.
Interesting. Yeah, I
And
know Propel.
they were changing how they experienced the taste by what they were hearing. So you
Wow.
can influence, your senses are all tied together. And that was really the first time I'd heard anyone say that
Yeah.
all of our senses are tied together and you can influence other senses by what you hear. And that,
Interesting.
yeah, that was mind
That's amazing.
blowing.
Yeah.
That's so mind blowing,
Hmm.
especially since, like, when I don't know about you guys, but like, a song comes on the radio, you
Hmm.
can literally be transported back to like a previous memory
Yep.
from that song, and that,
Yep.
yeah.
John
And
McClane was another one, and he has his place is named something different now.
Monster Sounds,
Monster.
It's
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So John McClane does a film and music course at UNLV. And when
Oh,
he was on the show really early on, like it was really one of the earliest episodes, he talked about using sound to time travel. So what you just said there was like, because when you experience a sound, like a squeak on a kitchen floor,
yeah.
and you're instantly transported to making cookies with your grandma. Like
Yeah.
Mhm.
like it is
Yeah.
just, and it's like you're actually experiencing the moment.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not a memory per se. It's
Yeah.
like you really feel it, right?
Yes.
Mhm.
Sound is emotion. That's
Mm-hmm.
why it's so powerful in advertising, because we don't buy based on logic. We buy based on emotion,
Mm-hmm.
how we feel about something.
Yeah.
And how are you going to make people feel? By sound.
Yeah, exactly. And those
Mhm.
Target commercials and Tide commercials
Yep.
and, oh, I'm gonna be the best mom ever. I'm buying Tide, or like, my kids are gonna be squeaky clean and, even though
Oh,
they're
I can't
Yeah.
tell you how many commercials have made me cry.
oh my
Oh
God,
yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
It's
what?
like, yeah.
Did you guys see the one with the dog during the Super Bowl?
Oh, which
No.
one was that?
No, it's a dog who gets adopted, and then you see like his whole life or her life, and then
Uh-huh.
at the end, his owner is pregnant and has her family, and he's about to close his eyes, ready to go to sleep. I think he's about to pass away,
Uh-huh.
and
Yeah.
so his whole life flashes
Oh my goodness, you're gonna
before
make
his
me cry
eyes.
right
No,
now.
No, right?
right, right.
Oh my God, yeah. There was here in Canada, there was a Rogers commercial that would run over the holidays for a long, long time about a father giving his daughter a cell phone.
Oh,
And that one, oh my God, like it just,
Oh man.
oh.
when men cry and we're like they're super emotional, that like I get choked up every single
Oh
time.
yeah,
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. The
Yeah.
empathy is, yeah,
Yeah.
it's off the charts. So
Yeah.
yeah, advertising ties into this, and a lot of that has to do with sound. Because if you just saw that scene and you didn't hear the music behind it, that's
Mm.
meant to evoke that, heartfelt emotion that you're
Yeah.
supposed to feel,
Yeah.
you wouldn't get nearly the same emotional impact. Those
Yeah.
tears wouldn't happen if you just saw it in silence.
Right.
Not usually,
Yes.
right?
And
So,
even some of those athletic commercials too, like the
yeah.
anthem style reads
Mhm.
where you're hearing someone like
Boom,
y-
boom, boom, boom,
yeah,
boom. Like
yeah,
all that like beating, right? Like
yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
beating on drums, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have
Yeah, yeah,
chills.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And then you hear
Yeah.
that voice come through that's real
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's just this anthem read where it
Mhm.
just instills like power and enthusiasm and yeah, and then you're like, okay, I'm buying Nike. You're like,
Yeah.
my kids next
I'm
time I ask me for
motivated.
Nike. Yeah, I'm motivated.
Yeah.
I
But
want
this is
to
the power of sound, right? It's everywhere, and we pay so little conscious attention to it, and yet it reaches everywhere.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like also the adoption. I don't know if they played it in Florida or if you've ever seen it, but the adoption commercial where it's please adopt a cat or a dog with the song Angel by Sarah.
Oh, Sarah McLachlan. Oh
Oh
Yes.
my
yeah. Who's
God.
Canadian, by the way?
Yeah. I love her. I went to one of
Yeah.
her concerts when I was back in the day, so that was a fun concert.
Yeah.
No, yeah, there's so many commercials that you just get choked up on. And I
Mhm.
I miss commercials sometimes when you're watching TV where you're on Netflix and there aren't commercials, you almost I
Watch YouTube instead.
Yeah.
yes, right? Or I
Yeah.
Spot TV, like I've learned that
Yeah.
you can go there and find the commercials, that you're interested
Sure.
in and
Mhm.
yeah, so I like actually watch the Super Bowl for the commercials and the
Me
halftime.
too.
If you subscribe to Adweek, I believe that
Oh,
they do a rundown of all of the Super Bowl commercials.
oh, that's
So
cool.
I highly recommend. Yeah, so because I'm in Canada, there are ones I won't see unless I see
Oh,
it
right.
Of
online, right?
course,
Okay.
yeah.
So I subscribe to Adweek and I watch them all afterwards.
Oh,
And
that's
yeah,
funny.
yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, if anybody wants to like listen to your podcast or get a hold of you and connect with you, like we've connected, how can the whole spiel, like how can they find you? And we'll put it all in the show notes too. So
Sure. I'm at voiceoversandvocals.com if they are interested in voice work. And if they want to check out the podcast, that's at audiobrandingpodcast.com.
yeah, cool. And you're on
Mhm.
all the platforms, but also just go to your website because that's like
Yeah,
what you want.
there's a lot there.
That's good.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love it.